With prices being so high on computer parts at the moment, what do the alternatives look like? Let's take a look at one today. Hello and welcome back to Nellie's Nerd Cave, where I talk about tech a little bit too much. This week, I'm looking at one particular thing that we could potentially do to help with those astronomical prices of computer hardware that we see at this present moment in time. In a previous video, you may have seen me with this thing. This is the GTX 970. This is by MSI and is the gaming overclocked version. This is built on NVIDIA's dated now Maxwell architecture, and it was released in September 2014. So it's kind of knocking on a bit for 12 years old. This particular card has 4GB of DDR5 with 1664 shader units and 104 TMUs. For those people who are not sure what a TMU is, they're texture mapping units. This particular card has a TDP of 148 watts, and this is delivered through the 8 and 6 pin PCIe power built right into the card just near the heat pipes. What I'm interested in more than anything lies a little bit further towards the video outputs at the bottom here. This particular thing is SLI, or Scalable Link Interface, a hugely discontinued NVIDIA technology for linking multiple graphics cards together to increase the processing power. Basically, once configured, what it kind of does is it's supposed to use both processors and memory of the cards to be seen as one giant thing. Now, today using SLI is not easy, especially with today's modern gaming technology and the way that graphics cards are actually functional now, and you can buy really cool 4060 Ti's, 5060 Ti's, etc. So with this particular experiment, this took me a while to figure out. And what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to have two matching pairs of cards, not two GTX 970s, but they need to match as far as manufacturer, etc., as far as I understand. And I searched high and low all over the internet, and eventually I found a second, exactly the same, manufactured in the same year, and now I have two of these. I also needed some way of linking the SLI together, and this is where, fortunately for me, I came across something within my local computer exchange, which is the branded name of a shop here in the UK, and it's called an SLI bridge. Now, I could have kind of got a flexible one, and I didn't really trust that that was going to function properly. But, as luck had it, the computer exchange I went to had this wonderful MSI one. Matches the colour of the card with its black and red, and it sits nicely on. What I didn't realise when I got this is that the logo lights up, which is pretty cool. Now, what this bridge allows is it allows both of these cards to talk to each other and perform the extra calculations during gameplay to hopefully increase performance overall in that game by using both processors and both sets of memory. Now, the other really hard part about this was that you need a motherboard that supports SLI. And there are not many around anymore. I do, however, have this particular one here. This is the MSI, again MSI, Z87 G45 gaming board. It matches the card beautifully with its red and black accents. However, this is a 4th generation Intel board. And in here, what we have is we have an Intel 4790K. It's got the stock cooler on, but it doesn't matter. I don't need to go crazy because I'm not really using a lot of processing power. I also decided that I was going to stay with this wonderful black and red theme, and what I have installed in this board is a 16GB kit of DDR3, not DDI, from HyperX. This is a Genesis kit running at 2133 MHz. Now, this is a really good kit. Again, it matches aesthetically with the red and black aesthetics of the card and the bridge itself and the motherboard. And again, it's really nice memory. It's well suited for this board. And I know I'm going a bit crazy with the colours, but it's what I had in stock. So I just thought, you know what? Why not? Let's use the red and black. Put that back in there. I will also use a 512GB SSD from Kioxia with my operating system on, as well as a crucial 1TB SSD where all my games are stored. And that makes up the entire test bench. Now, I have been through all these tests, and with this bench already sorted and me have already put all these things together with the magic of editing, we are going to test these, and we're going to look at one particular card, and we're going to look at a baseline for one card and compare it to both cards together. So I'm going to warn all the viewers out there, this card will not do ray tracing. So anything that uses ray tracing in the game will be instantly excluded. This includes my favourite game, Doom the Dark Ages. And anything that needs those fake frames are unfortunately excluded. So first of all, let's look at 3D Mark. Here, in the footage that you're going to see, we have really good frame rates of between 27 and 39 frames per second. And its final score becomes 3,792, which isn't really bad for a single card. And it may give you a great gaming experience depending on which particular games you want to play here. If you've seen this card in a previous video, you will have seen that it does play some really cool games quite well, to be fair. And you're going to see that again with some of these benchmarks. So now let's add the second card and the bridge to make them talk to each other, and then run that again for comparison. And with this one, what you can see is that with both cards, they are shown on the screen using MSI Afterburner. Both are at 100% usage, but the frame rates are better now, from between 30 and 60 frames per second. This also had a much better final score of 6,581, which is 57% better than just using a single card, which is really quite amazing. So I kind of wanted to see what this would look like with gaming, but we also ran the CPU scores as well. And I noticed that when I used a single card, I was getting 13% CPU usage. And with both cards, I was getting 26% CPU usage. So that is 100% of each is 13. So they've kind of doubled up the CPU usage there. But we can also see that there's no real bottleneck with 3D Mark with the CPU. So could we get anything else out of it? That's for a later experiment. Now, I do wonder what it would be like with 3 of these cards all linked together, because apparently you could do 3-way and 4-way SLI. I think I'd probably get away with 3-way on this board because it's got 3 PCI Express X16 on there. But again, that could be something that I do in a later video. So, onto the games that I'm testing. Now, I tested a few, and unfortunately, some of these games didn't actually use or utilise the SLIs on there. So I tested Fortnite, Star Wars Battlefront 2, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and the big question, could it run Crysis? So starting with Fortnite, as you can see here, only one card was seen within the game. And after extensive research, it is said that you can kind of get this to work with SLI. However, it never worked for me. And no matter how many tutorials I followed and how many bits and bobs that I actually did and settings that I changed, it only ever saw one particular card. So Fortnite doesn't work well with SLI whatsoever. So this game is a bust when it comes to using both cards together. Next up we have Star Wars Battlefront 2. Here it is with just one GTX 970, and you can see that the frame counter shows around about 102 frames per second, with between 96 and 99% usage within the whole card. And it also has this weird thing where it's only using 3 GB of GDDR memory on the card itself. So I kind of flicked over to using both cards. And with both cards in SLI, you can see we kind of get a slightly different result with 100 frames per second. Both cards are using 100% utilization, but each card is now using 3 GB of the 4 of GDDR5 that they both have on board. So I should have 8 GB of GDDR5 in total, but it's only showing that I'm using 6. Star Wars Battlefront 2, absolutely wonderful to run with SLI. You do get an uplift. It's not very much, but you do get an uplift. But I did have questions about this 3 gigs of RAM, which we will come back to later. Now I moved on to Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Again, starting with the one card in place, we can see that we get frame rates of about 70 to 75 frames per second. The usage again is 100%, and still only using 3 to 3.5 gigs of the RAM that's on the card. A bit weird. Again, the CPU here is not an issue with it being in its 23% utilization, so plenty of headroom on this 4th gen processor at stock. It's not even overclocked. Now, moving on to using 2 cards with Shadow of the Tomb Raider set up with SLI, we get a frame rate of about the same. But we actually dip lower at times than we did with a single card, and you can see that 1 out of the 2 are used at 99% utilization, and the other is only 24% used. However, the memory is nice and evenly distributed. Again, the CPU is clocked in at 29% utilization, so plenty of headroom on the CPU, so nothing to do with the CPU bottlenecking these cards. Again, you could happily play this game with a single card or both cards, but it worked perfectly fine with both. Now on to the big question. Can this play Crysis? Because that was one of the things that we used to say quite a lot. Now, this game has loads and loads of crashes sometimes and can have graphics issues. It's been updated quite significantly and it's less likely. But firstly, with a single card running with frame rates at about 115 frames per second and 65% utilization, with again this 3.5 gigabytes of onboard memory being used, Crysis is perfectly playable on this one card, and I have to say that all the graphics settings are set to very high, and it absolutely rocks through this game, and it's really good to play it, and it's really smooth. Now let's move on to 2 cards. And what we can see here is that there are no differences with the frame rates at all. However, there seem to be loads of stutters, loads of tearing on screen, and the capture really doesn't show any of this for you there, but trust me when I say that there was loads. Both cards are at 42% utilization, and the memory is shared equally between the 2 cards. I just think that this is a game that is not optimized for SLI, hence why I was getting lots of stutters and things like that. Again, the CPU was not bottlenecked at all. And what we've done there is we've looked at a few games. We've looked at a few of the scores, and it works really well. And with the high prices at the moment of hardware, is this really an option? Is SLI one of the things that we could go back to and play games a bit smoother? I don't think it is. There are only a select few games that actually support SLI mode, and they are not the AAA games that we are normally associated with today. Plus, they do not support ray tracing because they are older technology. I did test this with Doom 2016, but got the same result as Fortnite. It only saw one card, nothing changed, and it only recognised the individual card. I also tested this and tried to open things like Cyberpunk 2077. It stuttered so much that I had to Control-Alt-Delete out of the game. Again, not optimised for this. Plus, the minute you started trying fiddling with the settings, once you did get into the game, it was very difficult to get it really stable so that it didn't actually crash itself. Now, you will have noticed throughout this video that there were a lot of things in there that were kind of weird. 4 gigabytes of RAM per card. However, most of the tests only showed 3.5 gigabytes of RAM being used. It turns out that these cards across the whole GTX 970, even though they are advertised as having 4 gigabytes of GDDR5, the truth is that only 3.5 gigabytes of this is super fast GDDR5, and the other 0.5 gigabytes is a little bit slower and only used sometime for like being a cache. What a weird thing to do with these particular cards. You know, you're paying for 4 gig, not 3.5. So why not get 4 gigs? Why am I getting 3.5 gigabytes of super fast GDDR5 and then 500 meg of super slow rubbish? I can see why they kind of how they're using it as like a swap or a cache. But really, if I'm paying for 4 gig, I want 4 gig of super fast memory. That's the only problem with this particular card here. So I would say, don't waste your money like I did getting 2 of these cards and the SLI bridge. First, you need to make sure they are from the same manufacturer, like I said to you earlier. They need to be identical. They need to be from the same manufacturer. They need to be the same card. They need to be the same everything, including amounts of memory. You cannot put one from Pallet with MSI. It don't function because they have slightly different methods of doing it, slightly different core clocks, slightly different cores, etc. They both need to match, otherwise there's no point. I got these cards for about £40 each. It's not too bad. But the MSI bridge was 30 quid by itself, which is a lot of money. And to be fair, if you were to take that at 80 plus this, yeah, 110 quid. If you add £60 more or so, you can get a relatively cheap 2060 from your wonderful Facebook marketplace that will do basic ray tracing, so then you could play some more of these AAA games. You could quite easily get a second-hand 3050 for a much better experience. You'll also have to go to the trouble of finding a perfectly compatible motherboard. This one came with the box, and on the box it says it's compatible with SLI. This one has a silk screening on the board that says SLI. I've tried this on a modern board and SLI doesn't even show up as an option in the NVIDIA system tray. It needs to be SLI compatible for it to actually function. And remember that I do kind of do this so that you don't need to. And if you've never used SLI and wanted to see if it was a viable budget option, trust me, it's not. Don't do this. You know, this is great for a showpiece where I'm probably never going to ever use it properly. But with that, this video is now done. All the benchmarks are complete, and now I've just got to tidy everything away and take off the thermal paste and etc. And if you did make it this far, you'll definitely enjoy my other videos. So hit subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss them. And until next time, see you later.